Why is building a business so hard? Why nobody buys my healing program? Why is everything so frustrating and overwhelming? What if there was a better way? Hi, I'm Nina Maglic. I'm a marketing coach and healer on a mission to help amazing healers like yourself improve marketing, get clients, and make money with less stress. On my new show, I will do what I love best, translating complicated marketing and business strategies into practical, actionable steps you can implement with ease and clarity. She Runs a Business is a new podcast for healers like yourself who want to create a profitable healing business that provides the best life transformations for your clients and gives you the freedom and flexibility to enjoy time with your loved ones. Take your seat at the table and let's get started. Welcome to She Runs a Business podcast. Hello and welcome to the next episode of She Runs a Business podcast. Today we have a very special guest, Bethany Londyn, who is an energy healer for corporations. Bethany, thank you so much for being here today. It's my honor to have you as a guest. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. So excited.
Thank you. Bethany, can you explain a little bit about how did you become an energy healer and why did you choose to work with corporations?
Yes. So in 20, I deep dove into the whole personal development world. And I ended up moving to LA and I found myself surrounded by all these psychics. And it was just so fascinating to me. And eventually someone's like, well, you're a psychic. I'm like, no, I'm not. They're like, yes, you are. Remember that dream you had and this and that? I'm like, oh. So it was like in that moment, someone gave me permission to own my gifts. And then from there, I started learning and harnessing them. And, it really is an exercise. It's a muscle for many. So unless you just wake up and you're naturally gifted, which happens for a lot of people as well. They have this whole awakening experience. So my friend gave me a book, Ask Your Guides, and then that supported by Sonia Choquette. It's still out there. It's an amazing book. And it supported me in realizing how much I am not alone in this world. So through that book, through realizing how much I'm not alone and because I had just moved to LA, I was a little uncomfortable, with all the homeless people and stuff like that from being in suburbia, Portland, Oregon or something. And I started realizing, oh my God, God's here. There's spirits in the leaves, in the weeds, anything green around me. I started feeling supported. It was so beautiful. And then from there, I learned theta healing, and theta healing is my first energy healing kind of certification as well. But I did it for 2 years on my own, just from reading a book. And I wasn't totally in tune with everything I was doing, but I was doing it and people were having results. Even, oh my gosh, this is what's coming. Even herpes gone, which is such a taboo here in America. So people like that. So that was gone, kidney stones, all sorts of physical things. And job opportunities show up in 24 hours, all these amazing things. So I'm like, wow, this is amazing. So I noticed as I was doing it more and more and more, I started seeing things on the people, or my hands were just automatically moving. In fact, my hands were moving first when I was doing the healings. And then I realized that my hands were doing it. And then I realized that I was actually seeing something. It was this whole step-by-step awakening. And then from there, I had a guy in 2013 tell me, you should work with companies. There's something about your energy that you need to be on the board of advisors and working with companies because they'll have more opportunities. And at that time I was like someone's just going to pay me to be me and do not, because he didn't even need me to do energy healing. He just wanted me to be in the energy on the payroll of the company. That was awesome, but yeah, right. So it wasn't till 8 years later or 7 years later during 2020 where someone 3 days in a row, people were like, you need to work with companies. And I'm like, oh yeah, someone said that to me before. And then from there, boom. Not that I wasn't already working with startups or entrepreneurs or just anyone, but definitely started focusing more on the companies in 2020 and definitely had results. So the first person I worked with went from 8 million to 20 million in 3 months. In revenues. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I guess I have a thing for this. And I didn't know what I was doing. I was just being guided the whole way. I'm just trusting. And I was putting in the effort. It wasn't just me on the payroll. It was lots of work. So since then, I've kind of fine-tuned the balance. So it's not draining. It was really draining, but it was also my first one. So I was okay, let's see what we can create.
I think when you have a first client, you always want to have a good impression and really want to create results for your clients. And that's why you're pushing boundaries and like, let's do more, let's do more, let's do more to create the great results. And I want to talk a little bit about energy healing and companies.
Yeah.
How exactly energy healing can help companies? I think that's really important to understand, like, what are the benefits, not only revenue, did you see any other like benefits inside the company?
Yeah. Well, some of the people I've worked with, they've brought me in because I'll work with the owners, the CEOs, or the people that started it, right? And in some instances, I've been brought in to like lead workshops and stuff like that to help. But the reality is, there's two things coming up. The reality is the CEO is responsible for it all. Like they might have a board of directors and all that, but they are the one that are like have the most weight on their shoulders. So to have somebody come in and support that weight, like I feel like I always use this example, but one CEO was he's not sleeping, which is very common if you're running a big company. Lots of employees because they're so stressed out about paying the bills, making sure their employees are happy, making sure their clients are happy, all of the different things that they need to do, people that they need to respond to. And so just having any sort of support, even if it's like not a consultant, but like a therapist is going to help the CEO and it's going to support the ripple effect into the company. But bring me in, I'm working on the mirror of the CEO versus the company because in one example that I always share is the CEO was having cholesterol issues and concerns with like his arteries and everything clogging. But at the same time, his company was having bottleneck issues. So it's the same. It's different, but it's the same. So when we work with the CEO, then we're able to see the reflection in the company. And also the company is a collective of all the souls involved. So even in the client. So when I tune into specifically without the CEO, just the company's soul, it's including everybody. And I can see like, okay, we have fires here, or I was telling somebody else, sometimes it shows up as a rocket. So like if anyone's listening and they want to try this on for themselves, like look at the company as a rocket. How is the rocket? Is it stuck in mud? Is it leaning? Is it sideways? Are there people working on the rocket? Is it in the air? Like where is the rocket if you want to use that as a metaphor? Those are just some basic things that could help people get started if they're already intuitive and they want to look at it in that way. But I obviously go through a much more in-depth process, but that's like an easy quick glance. And then to what your question was also is like, how is it reflected in the people? Just think of going into different restaurants. Sometimes you go to a restaurant, you're like, oh, this doesn't feel good. It doesn't really feel good in here. I don't know if I want to eat here. Like, I'm going to go. And then you walk into another restaurant, you're like, oh my God, this feels so good. We feel so welcome. It's warm. It's embracing, so you can feel that energy through the CEO all the way down to the employees to your experience as a client.
So can we talk a little bit about that? I think that's so important. Would you say that energy of CEO has the biggest impact on the whole company and that energy of CEO actually is responsible for major blockages inside of company? Or would you say that everybody involved influences equally?
CEO. I'm going to put it all on the CEO. They attracted the employees. They attracted the teams. They attracted the managers, the CFOs, the marketing. They attracted it all. So through their energetic field. So when, like, I know of this one company and he ended up selling it, but he ended up selling it out of necessity because he could no longer do it on his own. But what did he do every day? He griped. He griped about the company. He's a CEO. He was not a client of mine. I just know him personally. So the thing is every day, what did he do? As the CEO and the founder, so there's a lot more energy when you're the founder than you come in as a CEO. I have to say, differentiate that. But he was the original founder. He would bitch and whine and moan and complain about his teams and how they weren't performing, how they weren't doing their jobs, just griping every single day. So if you can imagine that rippling down energetically, he doesn't even have to say a thing to the people. He's holding that space. And so therefore, the people are not going to perform. They're going to fail him, and therefore the company is failing. So if he was able to see and shift his perspective and maybe work with a Bethany and be open, because you do have to be open, because sometimes I'm going to say things that are like button pushing and you're like, no, I'm like, no, yeah, you're responsible. You got this from your dad. I see the lines. Like, you never know what's going to happen. But if he were able to see how people were working really hard and empower them and be happy himself and not have this day, this night of not sleeping, not complaining all the time about his company and people, then most likely he would start to see, he would attract some good things. And then that would start that catapulting, that would get the train moving in the right direction, let's say, because the trains are heavy when they're stopped.
So thank you for sharing that. I think it's really important that CEOs also understand that the biggest impact they have on a company, and sometimes when they have things around them that they don't like, it's mostly the projection of what's happening inside of them. And I always say, like, your company's projection, what's happening inside of you. If you don't like it, look inside. We talked a little bit about like energy of company and how every single person and especially CEO influences the company. But I'm just curious, does a company have a soul or any other energetic structures?
Yes. So the soul, how I see it, is the collective of everyone involved in the company, from the clients, the employees, to the CEO, to, the directors or whoever founded the company if it has been taken over. It's everybody. So when I was working with the first client, now when I work with CEOs, I typically talk to them every week. If it's only 15 minutes, fine. 30 minutes, that's all they get, fine. Like, let's just do a quick. And then that gives me a read on what their struggles are currently and versus what I'm seeing as well. But with him, the first guy, I would talk to him maybe 15 minutes every 3 weeks. Granted, this was my first client, but I was tuning into the soul of the company every single day. Every single morning, I would tune in and I would be like, oh, okay, this is happening, that's happening. And I would just kind of play with the energy, shift it up to how we wanted it to be. So that was purely looking at the soul of the company, not even touching the CEO.
So we talked a little bit about the obstacles company have and especially what CEO have and how that affects company. But I want to really dive deep and understand what are the biggest issues companies have that can be solved with energy healing. And what are the common problems that you see when you work with CEOs?
First thing I see is ego. And I mean, their ego is necessary to a certain extent, but if ego is the one leading and making the decisions, it's very much tainted by the history of their upbringing or, that's pretty much it. Let's be honest. I start working with the CEO or then we're working on their mom stuff. They're like, no, this doesn't make, I'm like, we got to go here. Sorry, this is what's coming. This is the biggest block right now that we got to shift through. So in something like that, they're like typically resistant at first, unless they're like wide open, which obviously I love the ones that are super wide open. Another thing is that when the ego is so involved and as we work, because I'm just clearing energy, right? When I say I'm like I love feng shui, it's like I'm doing feng shui to the soul. In feng shui, you clean up your space. You want it all organized and clean so that new things can come in. If you want to attract a relationship, you make sure that you have a second bedside table and that you have maybe a drawer open or some closet space available for them. You're creating the space for that individual to come in and fill the space. So I'm doing that with the company and the CEO. So if they're like, this is the way we have to go, and then I'm coming in and I'm like, well, it looks like the opportunity is over here to the right. We got to pivot. That's going to be very upsetting, especially if you're a founder and a CEO that's been working on this for like 3 years trying to get it off the ground, or like you've been running it for 20 years, like best. And here I am just coming in with like random information and I know nothing, right? But the thing is, I do know because I'm getting it purely from truth and the spirit and the light world and possibly even their guides that are like, hey, tell them this, So the ego is the biggest thing because it's protecting them and keeping them safe, right? So that's the biggest thing. A lot of times I feel like my clients want to talk to me about hires. Like, hey, I think I'm hiring this person. What's your read on them? And that has been very, I want them to empower them to make the decisions on their own so they aren't calling me all the time, because that will happen too sometimes. But, sometimes I'm like, this person feels really heavy, really dark. I could look into it more if you want to, but I would just rather just say, no, don't go for it. And like, One CEO hired someone that I was like, no, and it ended up being the biggest thorn in her side. So we did a lot of clearing around it. But yeah, she ended up paying this guy for like months and he didn't do any work. He only made everyone's life more difficult. So then she had this whole process of trying to get him out of the company. But yeah, it's very much like around decision making. That's why a lot of times I say I reduce decision making fatigue, because as we work together, I'm supporting the CEO in becoming clearer because I'm clearing out that gook and all the history so that they can be closer to the truth.
I think now we have a little bit more like clear picture how everything is working with companies and energy healing. But I just want to know, like, how long does it take to get results?
Oh, well, that depends. Yeah, it totally depends on the person. A lot of times, a lot of my clients have had results within 24 hours. Something will shift. Those are, I will, disclaimer, those people are very open and they know without a doubt that what I'm facilitating, and it's because I'm just creating the opening, like I said, it's up to them to receive the healing. So people will get results, yeah, with even an hour, like, yeah. But then other people, like when I'm like, you need to go over this way and pivot over here, and they don't want to do it. And eventually we stop working together because it's very difficult for me to work with a client that's not willing to be open. A year later, I'll find out they've made the pivot. I'm like, yay, they did it. I mean, the reality is we're all on our own journey, right? So we're all on our own journey, and I don't want to be judgy for them not making the transition. They have it in the back of their mind, what Bethany said. And if they choose to, be open to it, they can. If they don't want to, that's fine. There's beautiful lessons either way.
I think it's really important that we understand that, first of all, energy from CEO is the mostly responsible for the whole company stuff. Energy healing can really help find the blocks that CEO has, that CEO projects on the company and makes everything harder. And you mentioned that some people see results like in very short period of time. If they're open to that, if they are not, that's okay. That's their own journey.
Yeah.
It takes time.
I mean, I will say so far, every single 7-figure company I've worked with has made a minimum of $1 million in a 3-month period while working with me. A minimum. And the majority of companies have doubled their revenues in 2 months. That's pretty fast. But like obviously like 24-hour results too.
These are really amazing results. That's really something powerful. I want to talk about technique that you use to help companies. I know it's called energy healing, but we have a different techniques that we use to help clients. Do you have any specific technique that you use for companies?
I feel like people really want me to dial in a specific system and process because maybe that's easier to sell. I mean, in all honesty, I did have a spreadsheet that I created that I was following for a few people, like CEOs that really needed it, I felt like, but I'm really just guided. So like a spirit could come and start whispering in my ear that, as a family member or something like that, or just my own spirit guides communicating with theirs. It could be a theta healing thing, which is what I originally learned. It really is just like, I'm just guided. The thing that matters the most, I find, is the intention. So when a client comes to me and they're like, okay, I hear you double revenues. I want to double revenues. I have to be honest. Every single company that I've supported in doubling revenues, that was never the intention. It was like, they might have a revenue goal, but it's never been all about the money. So I think that has been an important thing. And I realize even with like I was saying, feng shui is all about intention. So as long as you have this beautiful, pure intention that I can get behind, that's not only supporting them, but also the world in some way, the rest just kind of falls into place of where I need to go to support them.
I also believe when you run a company, you have responsibility not only to make money inside of company, but it's also like responsibility to all these people that you employ and also to society. That's the only way how you can really have sustainable business. Good for you, good for your clients, good for society. Good for society.
If you aren't willing to work on personal growth, why would your company grow?
Yeah.
It's a reflection.
I want to talk a little bit about the project that you have with my dear friend, Susan Wagner. And that's a world peace project. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, I can. So first off, I'm going to say I'm pregnant. And this goes to support that. So I realized oh man, I guess it was 2 years ago. We've been doing this a little over a year and a half. So about 2 years ago, I had this I recognized something. I had an aha moment. So if you think about like, okay, I want to manifest this house. Well, what's blocking you from manifesting the house? Maybe it's that you realize you have to pay $40,000 in taxes a year after you get the house. I live in Brentwood, LA. That's not even like the norm. It's higher than that for taxes, but it's crazy. Yes. So you want to start looking at what the next problem is when you're manifesting something. So going back to 2 years ago, I am just talking with somebody and I find out that like their child or something is being assaulted. And it's just like, ugh, gut-wrenching to me, especially as a child, like, and there's a female. And then at the time, my brother had a girl who was like a month old. And I just started having all these feelings of like, oh my God, how do we protect them from like something like this happening to them? Right. And I was just so concerned. And call up my friend Susan, who is also a healer. She is very much connected to like the past lives thing. And I just start bawling my eyes out. It was just like this huge, like full body cry kind of thing. And I was just like so scared. And so in that moment, I'm like, oh my God, this is what's on the other side of having a child. Not that I was trying to have a child then, but I knew that I wanted one in the future. And I'm like, this is something I have to think about and clear on myself. And I haven't had any situations in my personal history, but like I know people and that's upsetting. So I realized that was like on the other side of having a child that was my biggest concern. So in that moment, I'm like, well, I need to clear this from the world. I need to clear it from the world. And I tried something on with one of my clients at the time who was Ukrainian and they had just started the wars over there. So that gives you a timeline of where we were. It was like right at the beginning. And she'd been raped. She'd been like manipulated, like all these things that they were showing us about what was going on in the war with the women over there. She's experienced even though she's in Canada. So I'm like, let's do the healing on you with the intention, remember all about this intention, that it's supporting the war. And so we did our healing. And I had that intention. So it was supporting her and, you know, everybody in the war. And within 30 minutes, she messages me and she's like, oh my God, Bethany, you won't believe this. They had their biggest win yet. And I'm like, how would you know that just happened after we did the healing? She's like, I have inside sources. I'm like, wow. So in that moment, I just realized the power of intention. I'm not going to say I'm not taking full responsibility of that, but whatever like little bit of piece that I took, that I played in the part of supporting that and people over there. I mean, obviously it's still going on. There's still a lot of catastrophe happening, but that couldn't have been more powerful for me at that time to signify what I was going into next with it's called being one because we're all connected. So with Susan, I realized if I can have that kind of little impact or huge ass impact with one person, imagine if we get a community together and we're working on these things together and amplifying that out into the world. Because when one person shifts to a level of love, it affects 700 people around them. And this has been proven with the Maharishi effect with like monks coming into a crime-ridden town and literally just meditating, peace, and radiating that out. And next thing you know, the crime rates go down. So I'm like, okay, let's get to work. And I just kind of became on this mission. And so we've been doing it once a month. We have a free healing. So everyone is involved. If you go to my website, bethanylondyn.com, go to being one and you'll see what the healing is of the month to join us. And we channel it all.
Thank you so much. I joined a few sessions and it was really powerful. I really loved it so much. And so everybody who wants to be part of that project, World Peace, enjoy it. Susan and Bethany, they are really doing an amazing job there. And I really love the energy and I really love how much love, how much care, and how much positive energy you put into that project.
Thank you. Yeah. It feels good too. Like, you know? So I feel like that's my job in the world is to really just support humanity the best that I can.
Thank you so much for doing the work you love and helping all these amazing people and also helping companies. I'm sure when you help companies, you're also helping employees because so many things shift inside of companies. And that's also a beautiful thing about healing. Want to ask you just one last question because I think it's very important. What message would you give to people who are skeptical about trying energy healing?
To play. So let's say I think of, what's her name? Jen Sincero, the badass something or other, but she's totally like anti all this personal growth, all this stuff. And then you read her book and you're like, oh, it's just so, it works so well. She basically surrendered and she's like, okay, fine. I'm just going to play with it. I'm just going to try it on, even though I'm super against it. I don't believe in it. I'm just going to try it on and play. And sure enough, she started having results. And next thing you know, she's an author of multiple like top New York Times bestsellers. And they're really good. They're really easy to read, especially if you're like anti. So go check them out. Jen Sincero. But yeah, just trying it on, because what I was even telling like my brother the other day, energy healing, as long as your intention is pure, is never going to do something wrong. It's never going to hurt you. It's only going to support. So what, you're either going to feel it or you're not, and I'll work with some clients. They just want to try it out. And I'm like, did you feel anything? They're like, no, but I feel warm and cozy. I'm like, then you're feeling something. That's good enough. You're experiencing something new that wasn't there 5 minutes ago, So yeah, try it on.
People expect miracles immediately when they work with energy healing, but many people underestimate the experience they have and they don't really pay attention, because energy healing is just pure experiential like way of seeing the world and experiencing everything what's happening, because sometimes people they're just too busy with their mind that they don't pay attention to their bodies.
Yeah.
And that's really beautiful.
And for me, that when I was working with actually the guy that was like, you need to be on the board of advisors for these companies, I would say, I'm so frustrated about something. He's like, where do you feel it in your body? I'm like, what do you mean, where do I feel it in my body? He's like, well, I don't want to tell you and give you the answer. And I'm like, oh, come on, help me out. He's like, fine. Like, do you feel a pressure in your chest? Do you feel weight on your shoulders? And I'm like, oh, yeah, I definitely feel something stabbing me on the back shoulder. Like now I'm so in tune with all that. But back then I was numb. I was totally numb to listening to the responses of my body. And he had me do yoga nidra, which I now have a yoga nidra on my YouTube, but you can go YouTube any yoga nidra and listen, or maybe somewhere where there aren't ads, because the ads get in the way. But that's the thing where they're like, do you feel your toes? Feel your toes. Now feel your ankle and your knee. And it just kind of works throughout your body, but it allows you to start paying attention and get present to your body, which is a really beautiful way to start experiencing the world as you feel it. When you walk around, I'll walk down the street and I'll feel like someone just stabbed me in the back. And I'm like, oh my God, clear that. Let's release all that, and they're probably being in an experience of being stabbed in the back. It's not that they were stabbing me. I'm just experiencing that with them. So, I just send them a little love and blessing. Yeah.
Bethany, thank you so much for being a guest on my show. Thank you so much for the work you do. And thank you for all amazing things you do to help the world. And thank you for everything. And one last question I have for you. If people want to connect with you, where they can find you?
Yes. Pretty much all things Bethany Londyn. It's Londyn. So that's the cool factor. A little bit different. But Bethany Londyn, Instagram, Bethany Londyn, TikTok, Bethany Londyn, YouTube. YouTube is Bethany Londyn Manifesting Catalyst. But if you type in my name, I'm sure you'll find me in 2 seconds. Yeah, you can always reach out. And I do free discovery calls. If you ever just want to be like, what's on offer for me? What's available? We can tune in.
Thank you so much for being here today. And everybody who's listening to this and watching, please keep shining your light, because the world does need that love and light inside of you more than ever. I'm sending you lots of love and big hug. Bye for now. My gorgeous friend, I hope you love this episode. If you learned something that is helpful for your business, I would really love to hear from you. Could you spend 30 seconds of your time, go to the Apple Podcast and leave me a 5-star review? This is the only way you can thank me and let me know how much you love this podcast. I love hearing from you. If you have friends who need help with their coaching businesses, share this episode with them and help them grow their business too. Thank you for listening to She Runs the Business podcast. Please share your gifts with the world, keep shining your light, because the world does need that love and light inside of you more than ever. I'm sending you lots of love and big hug.